All set? Hi, this is Elizabeth Reedy. I guess after a week we've had 6 debates so far in the Senate race. So after a week of having 1-minute sound bites to try to talk to people and let them know what I would like to do in the next 2 years in the Vermont Senate, tonight I'm very fortunate to be able to have a fireside chat with people of Middlebury and have a full half hour to try to give you some idea of who I am and what I'd like to see done in the Vermont Senate. I think that in the next 2 years, the most important issue before us as Vermonters is to create jobs and to continue our path of fiscal prudence that we've gone down, I believe, in the past 2 years towards trying to balance the Vermont budget. I'd like to talk a little bit about those things tonight. First of all, the reason I say that job creation is the most important issue before us is because I think that we need to come from that position if we really are going to improve the state's financial situation. There's no doubt that Vermonters have been in a lot of pain in the last few years with the recession. I think that there are a number of areas that I'd like to see jobs created in, and a number of ways that I would like to see that done. First of all, I think that we need to continue to create access to capital for small businesses. In the last year, I was successful in sponsoring with Senator Mary Skinner the small business investment bill that actually will pump $12 million into the Vermont economy to create good jobs. And the thing that I hear most often from businesses, the complaint that I hear most often, is that they find it really tough to deal with the permit process. It's true, most permits are granted, and I think the state agencies have really tried to improve, but we've got a long way to go. In order to ease the path for businesses in our permit process, I'll be sponsoring legislation this year to create an ombudsman. This ombudsman could be in the development department, or he or she could be located in closer proximity to the governor. So that when a major project comes into the state of Vermont, and there are several permits that project would have to get, the ombudsman would meet with the applicant and would really try to make it like one-stop shopping. Okay? So that the person wouldn't necessarily have to run around to all the different agencies. They would still have to get permits from all the different agencies, but they wouldn't, it would become an easier process. I think this is especially important when you have big projects that involve jobs. So another idea that I've had is that when a project goes in, I think it makes a lot of sense for state agencies to do more of what we call the pre-application consult. Now what this is for example, if you're going to put in a project that needs a septic system or that needs public buildings approval or needs to come up to other kinds of standards, there would be an opportunity to meet with the staff prior to beginning the project to get a real sense of what was needed. What are the requirements going to be? How do the regulators want to see the project presented? Especially with small mom and pop projects, I think that the need to hire an army of engineers and architects and attorneys to go through the permit process is a real problem. And I would like to see our state agencies offering up front a chance for applicants to come in and to understand the process and to get some help. So that would be another proposal I'd like to see on the permit process. Thirdly, I would like to see us consider the idea of self-certification of licensed professionals. In other words, when a business comes in and presents, let's say, a design for a septic system, that particular engineer would certify that his or her work did meet the state standards, and that would hopefully shorten the process and would not put the state in the business of having to review everything when you have a licensed professional that's able to say that yes, in fact, the work does meet the state standards. Another area where I think that we can cut down on the permit process is when a municipality has adopted ordinances or a plan that deals with certain issues that are duplicated in the state regulatory process. I think that we should really allow that review to happen on the local level and not cause it to happen again on the state level. So I think that that would be an important thing. The change that I plan to introduce as legislation in the next year that I think is perhaps the most important one is the concept of when you have conflicting jurisdictions in state government, one telling you one thing and another telling you another thing, that there be an authority, probably within the governor's office, the Office of Administration, that will make a decision so that the burden is not on the applicant to rebut or to keep providing more information and have these two agencies in a stalemate. So, for example, let's take the example of a restaurant owner. The person installs a range and the range has a hood on it. And fire safety and fire prevention at Labor and Industry tell you you've got to have a certain design. Okay, the next day in comes the health department and they say for sanitary reasons you got to have a different design. Okay, the restaurant owner who's trying to get open, let's say, for the holiday season is really between a rock and a hard place and is in a position where they really don't know what to do. So what I would like to see is perhaps it's the Secretary of Administration, perhaps it's a separate entity. I would like to see that person make that decision or bring the commissioners of those departments together, weigh the information and make a decision so that the applicant isn't left out there wondering what does the state of Vermont really want. So basically, in order to create jobs, I'm sorry to go on so long about it, I think the three things that we need to do is to create better access to capital for small businesses. We all know that the ones that can get it probably don't need it as much. And I think that the SBIC will go a long ways towards that, and I think that the Vermont Capital Access Program will be a nice component to go along with that. Secondly, do a better job in marketing ourselves. Let's privatize those rest areas. Let's beef up the Market Vermont program. And thirdly, let's make sure that Vermont has a user-friendly attitude to businesses that want to grow and expand and move to the state of Vermont. So basically, I think that if we could do those three things, we would be going a long ways toward creating an atmosphere where more jobs will be created. Now, what does that mean for state government? Well, of course, when the economy picks up and when we create jobs, we also create revenues. In the past year, we've seen a real slowness in the personal income tax and in the corporate income tax. And in spite of the recession, the meals and rooms tax has performed very well. And the sales tax has not really lagged beyond our projections. Now, we're through the first quarter of the new fiscal year, and we're a little bit ahead of our projections. This tells me that we are still going to have quite a deficit ahead of us, but that we may be able to begin looking at sunsetting some of the taxes as planned. But we really need to take a close look at that. The hard news to give people during an election year is that we've still got some tough times ahead. It's very easy, and I'd like to sit here and tell you, read my lips, we're going to cut your taxes, but we're not going to cut your services. Instead, I'm in a tough position of having to sit here and tell you, we're probably not going to be able to cut your taxes the way we'd like to. We may be able to cut some of them. And we're probably going to have to cut the programs and the services that all Vermonters have really come to appreciate. This is a tough thing to say during an election year. But you know, I guess I'd just take a minute to tell you a little story about when I was a child. I was always fascinated by the fact that my father had traveled all over the world. He'd been in all 50 states. He'd been on every continent in the world. And most of this was when he was in the service and serving in World War II. Well, when I was little, I was really taken with this whole idea that somebody had gone all of these places, and I, of course, had only just grown up in Vermont and really didn't know what any of these places looked like. So I can remember asking him over and over again, Dad, what is the most beautiful place that you've ever been? What is the best place that you've traveled to? And he would always give me the same answer. He said, Elizabeth, the most beautiful place in the whole world is right here in Vermont. And of course then, you know, it became a game, and I always asked him, and he always made the same answer. And then when I got older, I said, why is it, in spite of all these places you've been to Europe, you've been to Africa, to Asia, you've been in every state of the Union, why is Vermont the most beautiful place in the world? And he said, it's because it's our home. You know, this is where we raise our family, and this is our community. So when I'm running for election, and I would like to be able to say to you, yes, we're going to cut those taxes, and yes, we're going to bring out those services. I think about what this state means to me and raising my children here and having lived here all my life, and I can't make those kinds of statements. This is my home. I have too much invested here to tell people things that I don't think are going to be true. And so I think that a better approach is to ask each of us that cares about the state of Vermont to try to pull together, in spite of a tough political and partisan year, and to realize that we are going to have to continue to make some sacrifices to balance our budget. It's important to balance that budget. Our bond rating depends on it. Our ability for our municipalities and our schools to borrow depends on it. And it's real important. So in the next year, when you hear us talking about the tough times in Montpelier, I think we are on our way to sunsetting the deficit. And as soon as the deficit has sunset, I give you my word, I would move to sunset those taxes. But I think it would be foolish for us to promise to do something that we can't really do. I guess maybe I'll ask Kevin and Owen to come over for a minute. My children are here in the studio with me. You guys want to come on and be on TV for the last few minutes here? These guys have gotten pretty involved in learning a lot about government. So I don't know, Bert, can they talk into this microphone? So what do you think, guys? Last week you met Governor Clinton. Huh? What did you think about that? Are you nervous being on TV, Kev?
No.
Yeah. What did you think of meeting Governor Clinton? Can't think of anything to say? They had so much to say on the way down about, Kevin said to me, will you be really upset if I vote for the little guy? Remember? Ross Perot? Would you vote for Ross Perot?
I don't know.
So, anyways, you guys aren't gonna make any comments. We were lucky last week when Governor Clinton came that we were right in the front row, and we did get to meet him, and it was a real exciting moment. Anyways, I'd like to thank Middlebury TV for the chance to come on, and it's been a lot of fun talking to you.
Welcome. I'm Elizabeth Reedy, and I'm State Senator here in Addison County in Brandon. And I'm in Middlebury, Vermont this afternoon. And we are talking about some of the current issues that are coming up in the upcoming elections, and also some of the issues that Vermonters face. I have with me today Keith Hall, who's running for the Vermont Senate with me. Keith is from New Haven. Welcome, Keith. And I was hoping that we might start off this afternoon talking a little bit about the governor's recent proposal that new teachers coming in sometime after the year 2000 that would be entering into the workforce would be tested for a number of competencies and for some of their abilities in teaching. And this is part of Governor Dean's overall effort to improve the quality of education. Now, you were a long-time educator and superintendent of schools, and I'm interested in if you've seen this work in other places and what some of your views might be.
I think it's a super idea.
You
I don't think we need to wait till 2001.
Is that what, yeah. Okay.
I mean, there are tests available right now. One of them is the National Teachers Exam, which has been in existence for quite a long time, and it's used sometimes to, in some states, that is the test that's used to before you can be certified as a teacher. Maine is one of them. There are several other states that require that. What that test does, there are two parts to that test. One is a kind of a general knowledge and philosophy of education kind of questions, and then there is a subject matter part. You can say, okay, I want to teach English, therefore give me the English test, or give me the arithmetic test, or math test, give me the social studies or science test, and then you get two scores on it. One is a kind of a general background knowledge, and one a score on how well you do on the others. And some states have set a minimum score on that as a cutoff point. I think that's fine. I don't think there's any problem with that.
Well, let me ask you, as you know, we have been able with Act 60 to provide equal educational opportunity around the state, and now the governor feels very strongly that we should be also focusing our effort on the quality of that education, which I am very, very pleased with the focus on quality and the very positive focus on Vermont schools. I thought it was great that Governor Dean went up to Sheldon, Vermont, which is a small community, not a wealthy community, and they have not done a lot of spending on education. But his visit there really showcased the fact that many of these students were doing very well, especially in reading, and then come to find out they have a special time every day where everybody in the building reads, and where the notion of reading being valued is very, very high. And also in Bristol, there is, my son Kevin went to Bristol, and I know that they have a reading period every day and really try to. So the nice thing about focusing on quality is that you can go around in the various schools and look at what really works for students and really try to showcase that. And then I was talking with a teacher from Bristol the other day at a soccer game, and I said, so did you see about Sheldon, where they have, you know, the high reading scores? And oh, she said, well, we have that at Bristol, and I did know that. And so it really, you know, makes people feel proud and really begin to replicate some of these good ideas. But with this testing, did you find when you saw it in Maine, was there an increase in quality of instruction and quality of the education that students were receiving?
The teaching.
The teaching.
Testing of teaching. No, but it gave you. I'm not sure that you could tell any specific. I saw no studies to show that.
Right.
I think what it does, it gives the school board and the superintendent of schools the assurance that this person at least has a score that shows that he can teach and has a command of whatever the subject is that he's proposing to teach.
Yep.
That's the thing I think that gives you the assurance that you may not know otherwise.
Right.
And even out-of-state teachers who come into Maine or go into these other states, before they can get their license, they have to take this teacher's test. It's not something that if you're certified in Vermont, you may go directly to Maine and start doing that. You need to also take this test.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing. No, I don't know of any specific,
Well, tests can be pretty scary, I think. I remember
tests can be very scary.
You remember when I was teaching adult basic education,
Yeah.
And I've always been a good reader and a pretty good writer. And when I started teaching literacy and going into people's homes and helping with reading and helping parents learn to read to their children, a lot of people wanted to be able to balance a checkbook. Others wanted to get their GED, and then we started the program to help people finish high school. I decided that I would sit down and take the GED test. Well, a lot of those different classes of information you haven't dealt with, and it's challenging to have to sit down. And I think that a lot of us, if we had to take the competency tests that we're talking about for teaching, would be challenged by it.
I'm sure we would be, and that's one of the things that I have suggested before, and I just want to suggest it again, that there's so many people who are critical of education and how much children know and what they don't know and what they should know, that my suggestion is that one of the things that legislators volunteer to do, and the governor if he wants to too, is volunteer to sit down and take the SAT test. Volunteer to sit down and take the 10th grade test that was just given and publicized that we weren't doing well enough.
Right.
Let them take that test, or open it up to, let's say, on once a month or twice during the year. All schools will be open for anybody on the public that wants to come in and take these tests to see how simple they think they are.
Right.
Let's find out
Right.
how well they would do in it.
Right.
That's what I'd like to see.
Well, you know,
I don't need their names. I just like to see the score.
One thing, though, that does concern me a little bit in the dialogue over quality is I hope we don't, and I think that there has been a lot of emphasis on testing
Yeah.
of students, on testing of teachers, and I think that that's well and good, and I think we should have standards. And, you know, I liked the portfolio approach, and I realize it can't stand on its own, but that you would have a market basket of indicators that show some students don't test well, but they may be very creative. But just to veer away from testing a little bit, given that it is very important and that this new proposal is probably a positive contribution.
Right.
And by the way, I think it's terrific that the Vermont Teachers Association has come out so strongly backing the proposal. I think it really shows that they are partners, very active partners, in improving the quality. But just to veer away a little bit from the notion of testing and look at innovation, which I think is an important thing in education. And I think that innovation comes from ideas that teachers have, that parents have, that students have, and you have the right kind of environment for these ideas to flourish.
Right.
Now, one of the things that I was a big fan of was the Challenge to Excellence grants, which we put in Act 60 originally and weren't able to continue to fund. But I would like to see more incentives for local districts, parents, teachers, community members, administrators to come up with ideas on the local level and really make those opportunities available to students. I can get really excited about a range of alternatives. I like the idea of school choice, public school choice, and a lot of different ways of looking at educating. And for example, here at the Vocational Center, Addison County Career Development Center, I probably mentioned to you that ART program where they have theater and production, and it's a real innovative thing. I wish that we would allow our schools and our teachers that are gifted to really bring out these kinds of programs, because I think it really attracts the creativity in students. And I like to see us have like little mini magnet schools within the school district. Maybe one district really wants to become a real leader in math and science, and another in the arts, and another in the humanities, and really almost have little magnet schools where, for example, my niece and nephew are going from Bristol to Middlebury to be in the ART program.
Right.
Maybe Virgins wants to do the same thing for math and sciences or something like that, and really have almost like schools within a school so that the students really do have some public school choice, and let that flourish at the local level. I don't know, that's just an idea. What do you think?
I don't have any problem with that, but there's a lot of superintendents who probably would. There's a lot of them, but I've always encouraged teachers to take a chance on kids. Take a chance and try to do something unique and positive for children, and I think that's a reasonable way to go. But as long as there's some accountability to a general curriculum, you can't have all of those things going on with no basis for testing to see how general knowledge is going to see
Right.
but as far as doing those experiments and allowing parents and teachers to come up with discipline systems, if that's one of the things they want to do, or some kind of unique educational experience, I think it's great. I mean, I can remember one time, I guess, when I don't think neither one of my children were in the actual class, but there were 3 or 4 teachers. We had them in the 7th and 8th grade at Mount Abraham. We decided that we needed to form teams of teachers. I think there were 4. And those teachers were to be in charge of the education of 100 students or 80 or 90 kids. But they also were going to be the social guiding force for that group, too. In other words, that was the group that you were accountable for, and those kids were your children.
Well, we have that still at Mount
I know it's still there.
in the crews, you know, the blue crew. And,
yeah, that's right.
And so they have a core of teachers.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things, though, that was that I thought was outstanding was that they came up with the idea that they wanted to go up into northern Canada, where these power dams that we're buying electricity from,
right. Hydro-Quebec.
which is way up in, I don't know, up on the Arctic Circle
St.
somewhere.
James Bay, right?
Yeah, and they decided they were going to raise the money to go up there. And they came to ask if it was possible, and we said, well, yeah, sure, why not? And so we let them have a school bus. And in about October, which was pretty risky because there's a lot of weather up there in October, they took a bus and they took whatever number of kids there were, say 75 or whatever it was, and they went up there. And interestingly enough, at Porter Hospital the other day, I was talking to a young woman who was a nurse in there, who asked me if I was had been affiliated with the schools up there. And I said yes. And she said, well, you remember when the kids came up to northern Quebec?
Wow.
And I said yes. And she said, well, I was in the school in northern Quebec at the time.
Is that right?
And she said,
Small world.
and she said, and so we were the receiving school of that group.
Wow.
And my parents taught school there. And she said, and so I remember that experience.
Is that right?
And so she was talking to me about that. And that right there was enough to make it worthwhile to me to think about that. But that was a wonderful experience.
Well, of course, there's a lot of innovations like that now that we're seeing. And, of course, at Mount Abe, they have the African program.
Yeah, I know they do. I saw that. That's great.
And my son went to Ghana.
Yeah, I know. It's wonderful.
I mean, it's just an experience. I was telling somebody, of course, I have always grown up here in Vermont, Keith, and I never even saw the Atlantic Ocean till I was like 20.
Yeah.
And when I did, I expected to see fishing shanties out on the horizon, you know. And now to think that, you know, I mean, I am not a cosmopolitan person, and to think that now in high school they're traveling and studying in Africa is really kind of wonderful.
Yeah.
But I think you're exactly right that we do need a framework of curricula and testing, but that there's a lot of room for innovation.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, another thing that I'd like to see in the schools, and I've proposed this before, and I know it's probably going to take a lot more talking about to get to, but that is using our facilities more often. And in the summer, I had a chance to visit a program that they had at Champlain College a few years ago, and some of these are on like space camp, you know, like all the science that you need to build and prepare for a space flight.
Right.
And it's exciting, you know, and it's exciting for young students to learn these things. Or it could be a computer camp, or it could be an arts camp. And, you know, we could have our schools in use more during the summer on fun things that students would really get excited about. And it's theater, maybe it's poetry writing. Maybe it's music, it could be math, it could be science, but in a fun way, not necessarily in a classroom setting. And as a way to enhance student skills and to really give our kids a boost and an excitement about learning. So that's something that I have always wished that we could do. But then you get back in the legislative session and, you know, you're talking about the budget and you're talking about the issues of the moment.
and sometimes it's hard to implement some of these more creative ideas that I think are really have a lot of potential. So,
Right.
any other ideas that you have about creating excellence in our schools?
Well, one of the things I'd like to see, and I think this, one of my daughters went to Antioch College, which is in Ohio, and the unique thing about that college is that every student has to serve on a committee to run the college. They sit in on faculty meetings sometimes. They work on curriculum and come up with curriculum issues and new curriculum offerings. They sit in on how the food service part, the fire department, or the safety issue. I mean, and therefore they're an active participant in the running of the school, and therefore they have ownership in it.
Right.
And it seems like that often high schools become kind of mills where you're running kids through, and it would be better than to have right now we have, I guess, student council or something like that, which is a student government opportunity, and a couple of students usually are selected from each class, and they meet with the principal and other people and offer whatever. But it would seem to me that as young to teach democracy, which is what we probably should be up to, is that would be good if somehow you could replicate what they do at that college into high schools, so that kids feel an ownership in that building and feel that they are participating in their own future, or what.
Right, they're creating their own
creating something
future.
that they're doing. They're talking about curriculum issues, and they have a say in, well, if we had these kinds of issues in curriculum, and debate it with staff, and there was always staff involved, obviously, in this college with students, and there should be, and that would be a way, I think, that would help kids and the schools in general. I think it'd be stronger, because often kids come and they're warehoused through schools in a way, probably not as much as they have been in the past, but in some cases that's how it is. And they don't feel ownership in the school.
Right.
And
Well, I'm really a big advocate of that. When I was teaching adult literacy, I realized the importance of self-directed learning, especially for adult students.
absolutely.
Because if you don't have self-directed learning, they see no relationship to their life for the learning. And you would really see somebody motivated, for example, if they were starting a business, that they really wanted to learn financial record keeping, or they really wanted to learn certain types of literacy skills that would further their life. And so also, when we're working with young families and perhaps they're on public assistance and we're trying to move them into the workforce, if it's self-directed, if the person feels that they can envision their own future and plot out the steps to attaining those goals, then they are much better able to see their way from perhaps public assistance to going into the workforce. And I've always wondered why we didn't allow some level of self-direction in the learning for our younger students, because it is so vital when you're working with older students. And I think that you're exactly right, that the more investment that students have in their own education, the better it really is. So
That's one thing I'd like to see
Yeah.
more of, if it's possible to do that. But I'm not sure whether that's a legislative issue to do that, but just a thing that we ought to be doing anyway in
Right.
public education, and
Well,
encouraging teachers and administrators to do those kinds of things.
Well, we certainly don't need any more mandates. I'm sure you can
No,
agree
no.
with that.
I'm not for too many more
and mandates certainly have been one of the issues that with the public school approval process, and they want to tell you how many books and how many chairs, and a lot of them are unfunded,
Yeah.
and they ended up going, of course, to the local property taxpayers to pick up. And this is really too bad. and we can't go back to that, but I certainly think that Governor Dean's campaign and the focus that he's placed on quality for students,
No question, it's good focus.
it gives us a lot of chance here to really come up with some of these ideas, almost like opening a docket on how to improve education here in Vermont.
Well, I think if it comes to mandating, then the state should come up with the money to pay for the mandate.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
how it is.
I do too, and I've always supported that. You know, talking about another big ticket item, I think, is health care. And I wondered if you've given any thought to Vermont's healthcare system and things that you think are good, things that you think need some improvement.
Well, I know that you've done a pretty good job about children. That's really, I think, is important. I think that children, I can remember when I lived around here before, you had the dental, what was it, the tooth fairy bill.
Right, tooth fairy.
Which is the
That's right.
tooth fairy bill gave the chance for children to have
Right.
their teeth fixed,
Right.
whether they had money or not.
Right.
And I thought
Yep,
it was great.
that's
But
right.
now, today you have, I guess, health care for I don't know what age that's through, but I think it's certainly a good.
Right up through
it's
18. That's the
18.
Dr. Dinosaur program,
Yeah, that's great.
where we have covered most children, almost all children. And this year in the legislature, we were able to put through an additional expansion, I believe, that will go up to 300% of poverty. And the notion here is that if we can really prevent some of these problems and take care of them early on, that prevention is a big thing, and that we all benefit. Now, I'll just tell you that I have a concern also about, we had hoped to cover those additional children up to 300% of poverty with a Medicaid waiver that we would get from the federal government. Well, because Vermont has been so aggressive in covering people, you know, I think that there may be a sense that another waiver may not be as forthcoming, and I believe it should be. But nevertheless, there seems to be a commitment by Governor Dean and by others to go ahead anyways with the additional coverage. The only thing that I'm cautious about is that, of course, covering children is not a very expensive undertaking because most children aren't very sick, and when they are, they recover quickly. I want to make sure that we have plenty of capacity in our healthcare system to take care of our seniors, who oftentimes have more chronic kinds of problems, need more health care, need it over a longer, more sustained type of period of time and different settings. We do have Act 160, which frees up the settings in which seniors can be cared for, no longer just nursing homes, but also trying to get community care and a range of service for seniors. But at the same time, we still have some problems there in that delivery system. We do have people that do need to be in nursing homes, and I want to make sure that they get the quality of care that they need. So we're not really out of the woods with our healthcare system.
Oh no,
And,
not by far.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Do you have any ideas or experiences
Well,
that?
one other thing that bothers me is not a lot of people discuss it, and they may know it and they may not, but if in fact you have health care, if you have a health insurance plan or you're wealthy enough so you can pay your own health care, and you go to a hospital, or to medical doctors, I'm sure it's the same, is that for about every dollar that you spend for health care, you get 65, 70% worth of service for yourself. And the other 30% is for those who can't afford it.
Right.
Which I mean, and they should have it.
Right.
I don't say that they shouldn't have the care, because they should.
Right. Cost
But
shifting.
I'm saying that the thing about it is, if you really look at that in a realistic point of view, that means that I am being taxed 30% on the dollar I spend to pay for those who don't. Well, 30% is a wicked amount of money. That's more than I pay for income tax at the federal level. I mean, if you're in the 28% bracket, that isn't 30.
Right.
And so I'm concerned about that. And I do have a little statement here. which I took a look at some things. All of these people receive health care paid for by the government in one way or another. All military and dependents of military personnel.
Yeah.
All veterans are entitled to health care,
Some of them don't get what they need, though.
but they're entitled to it.
Well,
But they don't
okay,
get it.
go ahead. Keep going.
All
We might
retired-
argue that a little
all
bit.
retired military personnel and dependents, all prisoners get free health care at our expense. All persons over 65 under Medicare or Medicaid or one or the other. Vermont, all children under 18, as you just explained to a certain
Yeah,
point.
300% of
Those
them.
who cannot afford health care, someone pays for that, and we pay for it, as I said, 30% on a buck. That's 30%
Right.
tax. Okay. All federal legislators and government employees get
Not
health
state
care.
legislatures.
No,
No.
federal.
Right.
Federal. All federal legislators.
Right.
And in some states, state legislators do too. But anyway,
Not in Vermont.
what I'm saying is this, that if you add up the number of people, and I haven't, but if you added up the number of people in that list, the total population
Right.
of people, you would have quite a few. You'd have a fairly good chunk. So what I'm saying is, why not just have a single payer insurance program like Canada's
Right.
for the whole of us,
Right.
so that we don't have to pay 30% to pay for those who can't pay. Why don't we just all pay 7%?
Right.
Or 6 or 8 or whatever it is? Let's pay that and pay for health care and get health care for everybody.
Well, I love your idea, and it's one that I have supported, but as you know, the president did put that forward, and
I
we've
know that.
had the debate here in Vermont,
Yeah.
and it was not possible, it seemed, strategically to do it all at once. And so we've been doing it piecemeal. And as you say, there are problems with that. And you get to have problems with quality as well. Because what
Absolutely.
ends up happening is now we have this system of HMOs and health maintenance organizations. And, you know, there's a lot of pressure for cost containment, which I favor cost containment. But I also favor a patient's bill of rights.
So do I. I've got that down here.
That really, and we worked on that this year in the legislature, and we really made some progress to say that, you know, I don't want to see people being denied basic care that they very much need in order to have a decent health and decent life. And I can tell you one thing, that we are going to look really, really hard at that in the upcoming session and make sure that the measures we put in are implemented, and make sure that even stronger provisions are put in. And that's one of the fallback points from not having universal health care, is that we do have some of these problems with these HMOs.
I agree with you. And I have those down as concerns. I mean, I'm concerned that some insurance executive is making decisions that doctors and patients should be making about their health care.
I agree with that just as well. People in the front office instead of medical personnel. And I think we're out of time.
Okay.
But I want to thank Keith Hall from New Haven for joining us, and thank you for joining us to talk about these issues that we face as Vermonters.
Thank you.
I think it would be helpful to somebody to just get a list of who's on it now, the number of people, so that we can see what that does to the composition of it.
Richard probably has that.
Great.
Any questions?
The first two provisions that you made, if we were to restore eligibility for people living in heated rental units, are you advocating that we increase the appropriation to do that, or are you advocating that we include the number of people receiving the same existing appropriation and that the benefits be prorated accordingly?
Well, I don't know that increasing the appropriation is, I mean, the way things are functioning now is within the state's bailiwick. If we get to that point, I think we would want to consider it, but at this point, we would
It's all federal
we
money
would
that you're
just
talking
ask,
about.
right,
It's
that
a
they
fixed amount of federal money.
be eligible to apply.
Okay, it would, as I said, on that particular point, it would be helpful for me to know what the impact is going to be on the benefits before I go for that, because I think I was one of the people that said if we're going to have less money, then the first priority is to keep people warm in the winter.
Right, I think
And
that's what
I appreciate, I can think of instances where people pay a higher rent. On my own, I have a tenant that is probably would be eligible for assistance that isn't because we have the heat in her rent. And she pays a higher rent and probably goes without something else as a result of that. But I'm just curious about what the impact would be for those people, because the first thing I want to do is keep them warm, I think, under this program. Senator Sears, did you have something?
I don't know.
Oh. That would be helpful. And also, if I'm gonna ask David Tucker, who inadvertently wasn't asked to testify, to see if we can get some numbers from him. But if you are you representing the CAPS also?
the Community Action Directors Association.
Right. So somewhere they have some numbers about the waiting list that they have for weatherization and that sort of thing. And I'm assuming that we need to get those from somewhere. Senator Sears has asked some very good questions today, but I mean, I'm generally familiar with the fact that there's long waiting lists, there's a lot of work to be done, but I think it will be good to see the numbers
I
in
think
front of
David
us.
probably has those, not in all areas of state, the Community Action Agency does not administer
Oh, yes, that's right.
weatherization, some do
That's right.
and some
That's
don't.
right.
So I think to get the comprehensive figures, you
Okay.
can have those.
Good point.
Thank you.
I always forget about that. David Tucker, if you are willing to testify today, we take you next before we move off the subject of weatherization. I apologize for not getting to you sooner. I probably haven't made the adjustment to your new role, so.
Thanks for letting me in. I don't know if I'm prepared or not, but at least I had less chance to get nervous. I'm ready. My name is David Tucker. I'm the director of the Office of Economic Opportunity. I have some paper to hand out. It's, I think for your sake, thankfully, it's only one page. It is information on both sides of the page. And I guess what I'd just like to try to do is to answer some of the questions that have already been raised. Aren't we done yet, and when are we going to be done? What we tried to do is take a look at the number of homes built before 1940 in Vermont and look at how many of those homes were inhabited by low-income people according to the 1990 census, and then just subtract the number of homes that have been weatherized since 1980. I mean that's a pretty broad approach, but even at that number, we would have only done about 61% of the houses that were eligible at that time. I mean, that's a really
Can you say
low-
that again? I'm sorry. Would you say that again?
Okay, under the frequently asked questions on
Okay.
that handout, number one there, aren't you done yet? I mean, that is a hard number to get a handle on because people age and go on fixed incomes, or their economic circumstances change, new families are formed or whatever. And so folks might be living in a house that needs weatherized but become income eligible over time, or people move into homes that need weatherization. So it's real hard to get a handle on. So what I tried to do is just come up with a rough estimate for folks to sort of gauge the impact so far and sort of the kind of work that needs to be done.
Thank you.
The other thing I tried to do on that same little handout there is on number 4. Folks have asked, well, what about repeal of the sunset and what kind of control and oversight does the legislature have? I mean, we do go through the full appropriations process, and at least my experience last year in the appropriations committee is it wasn't just, I mean, we were asked some pretty pointed questions, and folks did take a pretty hard look at what was going on. We also do an every other year full impact evaluation of the program. And I guess my strong feeling is that's real integral to the continued success of the program. That really helps us manage the program. That really helps us take a look at what works and what doesn't work and how we can do a better job. So I mean, I would certainly want that to be a continuing part of the program. And we also provide a...
Is that in statute, or is that just something you do? Do you know?
That's something we do. And it really has made a big difference in the program. It's really helped us focus on what kinds of things work and how to increase the savings out of the program. So it's something that I would certainly would want to continue. And we do a yearly benchmarks report to the legislature too that we are required to do. So it's certainly up to the legislature to see what kind of oversight is required, but we're certainly open to lots of options and lots of scrutiny. Just the other thing that I have is just sort of the latest information from our impact evaluation that was just completed for this year. And that's on the back there. I won't bore you by reading through it, but it is the most recent information we have on how the program is proceeding and the kinds of savings we're achieving.
I appreciate your comments, particularly about the sunset. And it is helpful to see that it's a continuing program, and I support weatherization efforts. That's not the issue for me. The issue is legislative oversight, and as the legislature gets more and more complex and the issues more and more complex and the dollars bigger and the budgets and everything else, we get, talking about weatherization, we probably heat an awful lot of homes. Or fuel assistance, we could heat an awful lot of homes with the paper we get. And so reports are helpful to the legislature, but they don't do the same thing as being forced on a periodic basis. And I hate to see programs used as a political football, but in some cases, I think it's good for the legislature to review programs and sunset forces over a period of time. And if something has become a political football because of it, that's unfortunate. But my support in this particular case and in many others for sunsets is just that. I introduced a bill on search warrants, and I supported a sunset, even though I'm strongly in favor of the search warrant by fax, if you remember.
Because you want...
Why? Because I want to review the technology. If the legislature doesn't do it periodically, then it's just the administration. Nothing against the administration, but they sometimes have a different view.
Other questions for David Tucker? Thank you very much, David.